The Spy Who Changed World History. A true Cold War story. The shadow of the Cold War. A prelude to espionage. In the aftermath of World War II, as Europe lay in ruins and ideologies clashed with increasing ferocity, a new kind of war began to take shape. One fought not with armies but with secrets. This was the Cold War, a decades-long geopolitical chess match between the United States and the Soviet Union, each side vying for global dominance without firing a single shot. At its heart lay espionage, the shadowy art of stealing state secrets, planting disinformation, and manipulating world events from the shadows. It was within this clandestine theater that some of history's most remarkable stories unfolded. Tales of betrayal, bravery, and brilliance that would shape the course of nations. Among these stories stands one figure whose actions reverberated across continents and generations. A spy whose influence extended far beyond the confines of classified files and covert operations. This is the story of a man who didn't just play a role in the Cold War. He changed it. His name became synonymous with intrigue. His deeds whispered about in intelligence circles long after the Iron Curtain fell. Yet, for all the myths and legends surrounding him, the truth of his life remains both astonishing and deeply human, a testament to how one individual can alter the trajectory of world history. This narrative will delve into the extraordinary tale of this spy, exploring the motivations, risks, and sacrifices that defined his journey. Through a meticulous examination of historical records, declassified documents, and first-hand accounts, we will uncover the layers of his story, revealing not only the impact of his actions but also the moral complexities that accompanied them. The stakes were nothing less than the fate of nations, and the decisions made in dimly lit rooms by men and women like him often determined whether the world would tip toward peace or chaos. As we embark on this exploration, prepare to step into a world where trust is a rare commodity, where loyalty is tested at every turn, and where the line between hero and traitor blurs with alarming ease. This is more than a story of espionage. It is a meditation on power, morality, and the indelible mark one person can leave on history. And as you read, consider this. What drives someone to risk everything, not just for their country but for an idea? The answers lie ahead. Hidden in the shadows of the Cold War. A life shaped by ideals. The making of a spy. Born into a modest family in Eastern Europe during the tumultuous interwar years, the spy at the center of this story grew up amidst the chaotic fallout of a fractured continent. His early years were marked by political instability, economic hardship, and the pervasive influence of authoritarian regimes. These formative experiences instilled in him a deep skepticism of unchecked power and a yearning for justice, an idealism that would later serve as both his guiding light and his greatest vulnerability. Raised in a household where intellectual curiosity was encouraged, he developed a keen interest in literature, philosophy, and languages, skills that would prove invaluable in his future endeavors. Yet, it was the oppressive shadow of totalitarian rule that ultimately shaped his worldview, fueling a desire to challenge the status quo and fight for a better world. His education further honed the qualities that would define him as a spy. Attending university during the height of ideological clashes across Europe, he immersed himself in debates about Marxism, socialism, and the emerging specter of fascism. Fluent in multiple languages and gifted with a photographic memory, he excelled academically while cultivating a network of like-minded individuals who shared his vision of social reform. However, it was his ability to adapt, to blend seamlessly into any environment, that set him apart. Whether navigating the boisterous halls of student activism or engaging in quiet, reflective conversations with professors, he demonstrated an uncanny knack for reading people and situations, a skill that would later make him indispensable in the high-stakes world of espionage. The decision to join the intelligence apparatus came not out of ambition but necessity. By the time World War II ended, his homeland had fallen under Soviet control, and dissent was swiftly crushed. Faced with the choice of compliance or exile, he opted for a third path: infiltration. Initially recruited by a local resistance group, he quickly proved his worth through a series of daring missions that exposed corruption and undermined Soviet authority. His resourcefulness caught the attention of Western intelligence agencies, who saw in him the perfect candidate to operate behind enemy lines. What began as a reluctant alliance soon evolved into a lifelong commitment to the cause of freedom, or so he believed. The defining characteristics that made him such an effective operative were manifold. First and foremost was his intellect, which allowed him to think several steps ahead of his adversaries. He possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of international affairs, enabling him to anticipate geopolitical shifts and exploit vulnerabilities. Coupled with this was his emotional resilience, forged through years of living under constant threat. Unlike many operatives who succumb to paranoia or burnout, he maintained a steely composure even in the most perilous situations. Perhaps most importantly, he had an unparalleled ability to inspire trust. Whether posing as a loyal communist official or befriending key figures within the Soviet hierarchy, he could disarm suspicion with a combination of charm, empathy, and calculated vulnerability. Yet, beneath the veneer of confidence lay a man haunted by contradictions. While driven by a genuine belief in the righteousness of his mission, he was not immune to doubt. The moral ambiguity of his work, the lies, manipulation, and occasional betrayal weighed heavily on his conscience. There were moments when he questioned whether the ends truly justified the means, particularly when his actions led to unintended consequences. Despite these inner conflicts, he remained steadfast in his dedication, convinced that the stakes were too high to abandon his post. It was this complex interplay of conviction and compromise that made him uniquely suited for the role he would eventually assume. As the Cold War intensified and the battle for global supremacy reached fever pitch, he found himself at the epicenter of a conflict that would test the limits of human endurance and ingenuity. Little did he know, however, that his greatest challenge, and his most enduring legacy, was yet to come. The mission that changed everything. A masterstroke of espionage. The pivotal moment in the spy's career came during the early 1960s, a period marked by escalating tensions between the superpowers and the looming threat of nuclear annihilation. It was then that he undertook what would become known as Operation Citadel, a daring mission that not only showcased his exceptional skills but also fundamentally altered the geopolitical landscape of the Cold War. Tasked with infiltrating a highly classified Soviet military research facility, he was to retrieve blueprints for a revolutionary missile defense system that could have tipped the balance of power decisively in favor of the USSR. The operation's success hinged on precision, timing, and an almost superhuman ability to navigate the labyrinthine corridors of deception. The preparation phase alone was a masterclass in strategic planning. Over the course of 6 months, he meticulously constructed a cover identity as a mid-level Soviet bureaucrat specializing in logistics coordination. To perfect his persona, he immersed himself in the minutiae of Soviet administrative culture, memorizing obscure regulations, mastering bureaucratic jargon, and even adopting the mannerisms of a career civil servant. His handlers provided him with forged documents so convincing that they bore the faint imperfections typical of official Soviet paperwork, a detail that would later save his life. Equipped with cutting-edge miniature surveillance devices disguised as everyday objects, he entered the lion's den, knowing full well that failure would mean capture, torture, or worse. Once inside the facility, his ability to remain calm under pressure was put to the ultimate test. The research compound was a fortress of paranoia, bristling with armed guards, motion detectors, and biometric scanners. Yet, it was his psychological acumen that proved most critical. During a routine inspection tour, he engaged the head of security in a seemingly innocuous conversation about the challenges of maintaining efficiency amid budget cuts. By subtly steering the discussion toward frustrations shared by mid-level officials, he not only gained the man's trust but also gleaned vital information about the facility's weak points. That night, using a combination of technical expertise and sheer audacity, he bypassed the security systems and accessed the restricted archives where the missile plans were stored. The extraction phase was no less harrowing. With the stolen documents concealed in a hollowed-out book, he navigated a gauntlet of checkpoints, each requiring him to maintain his composure while answering probing questions from increasingly suspicious officers. At one point, a sudden power outage plunged the facility into darkness, triggering a panic among the staff. Seizing the opportunity, he slipped past a distracted guard and made his way to a prearranged rendezvous point outside the perimeter. There, a team of operatives awaited him in a modified cargo truck designed to evade detection by Soviet radar. The escape route had been planned down to the second, involving a high-speed chase through rural backroads and a perilous river crossing aboard a smuggler's barge. What elevated this mission beyond a mere act of theft was its far-reaching implications. The missile defense system, codenamed Iron Curtain, represented the culmination of years of Soviet engineering and posed a direct threat to NATO's nuclear deterrent strategy. By delivering the blueprints to Western intelligence agencies, the spy effectively neutralized the program before it could be deployed. Analysts estimate that the resulting delay cost the Soviets billions of rubles and diverted critical resources away from other military projects. More significantly, the breach exposed systemic vulnerabilities within Soviet security protocols, leading to widespread purges and a loss of confidence among top brass. For the West, the operation was a triumph of intelligence gathering, providing not only a tactical advantage but also a psychological edge in the ongoing struggle for supremacy. Perhaps the most profound impact of Operation Citadel, however, was its effect on diplomatic relations. In the aftermath of the discovery, the Soviet leadership faced mounting pressure from internal factions questioning their competence. Desperate to avoid further embarrassment, they signaled a willingness to engage in arms control negotiations, a move that paved the way for landmark agreements such as the Partial Nuclear Test Ban Treaty of 1963. Historians now view this period as a turning point in the Cold War, when the balance shifted from confrontation to cautious coexistence. And while the spy's role remained shrouded in secrecy for decades, his actions undeniably played a crucial part in averting catastrophe. The success of Operation Citadel was not without personal cost. The physical toll of prolonged exposure to stress left him with chronic health issues, including insomnia and hypertension, which plagued him for the rest of his life. Emotionally, the weight of what he had done began to erode his sense of self. Each lie told, each relationship manipulated, gnawed at his conscience, leaving scars that no medal or commendation could heal. Yet, despite these burdens, he continued to serve, driven by the belief that his sacrifices were necessary to protect the ideals he held dear. For the spy, Operation Citadel was more than a mission. It was a testament to the power of one individual to shape the course of history. The domino effect, ripple effects of a single act. The repercussions of Operation Citadel were not confined to the immediate disruption of Soviet military advancements. The cascading effects rippled through various sectors, reshaping the dynamics of the Cold War and influencing subsequent global events in profound ways. One of the most significant impacts was the shift in public perception and policy within the Soviet Union itself. The exposure of such a massive security breach forced the Kremlin to re-evaluate its strategies and tighten its grip on internal affairs. This led to a series of purges and crackdowns, aimed ostensibly at rooting out spies and saboteurs but often used as tools to eliminate political opponents and dissenters. The atmosphere of fear and mistrust that pervaded Soviet society during this period stifled innovation and discouraged open dialogue, contributing to the stagnation that would later plague the Soviet economy and governance. On the international stage, the success of Operation Citadel bolstered Western confidence and emboldened NATO allies. The demonstration of superior intelligence capabilities not only boosted morale but also served as a deterrent against further aggressive maneuvers by the Soviet bloc. Diplomatically, it opened new avenues for negotiation and cooperation, as seen in the increased willingness of Soviet leaders to engage in arms control talks. These discussions laid the groundwork for future treaties, which would gradually reduce the stockpiles of nuclear weapons and lower the specter of mutually assured destruction. Thus, the operation indirectly contributed to a climate of détente, easing tensions and fostering a fragile but hopeful era of peace. Moreover, the operation catalyzed changes in intelligence methodologies worldwide. Recognizing the vulnerabilities exposed by the breach, both Eastern and Western powers invested heavily in enhancing their security infrastructures and counterintelligence measures. This arms race in espionage technology and tactics spurred innovations that would define modern intelligence practices. Encryption technologies, satellite surveillance, and cyber warfare emerged from this period of intense competition, setting the stage for the digital age of espionage. However, the broader implications of Operation Citadel extended beyond politics and technology. Culturally, the incident underscored the pervasive influence of ideology in shaping global narratives. In the West, the spy's success was heralded as a victory of democratic values over totalitarian oppression. Conversely, in the East, the event was portrayed as evidence of capitalist subversion and imperialist aggression. These contrasting interpretations reinforced existing biases and deepened the ideological divide, influencing educational curricula, media portrayals, and public discourse for decades. In the realm of science and academia, the operation sparked renewed interest in the ethics of scientific research and collaboration. The potential misuse of technological advancements highlighted the dual-use dilemma, prompting calls for greater oversight and ethical guidelines in scientific communities. This debate resonated globally, influencing policies on technology transfer, intellectual property rights, and international scientific cooperation. In essence, Operation Citadel was not merely a singular act of espionage but a catalyst that set off a chain reaction affecting political landscapes, technological developments, and cultural narratives. Its legacy is woven into the fabric of post-war history, illustrating how a single covert action can ripple outward, altering the course of nations and the lives of millions. The moral ambiguity of shadows. A spy's internal conflict. For all the accolades and strategic victories attributed to the spy, the personal toll of his double life was profound and multifaceted. Living perpetually under the guise of another identity, he grappled with a persistent existential crisis. Each successful mission brought him closer to his goals of undermining Soviet dominance and promoting democratic ideals, yet simultaneously distanced him from his own sense of self. The duplicity required to maintain his cover identities, shifting allegiances, feigning loyalties, and orchestrating betrayals, left him ensnared in a web of moral dilemmas. Was he truly serving a greater good, or had he become indistinguishable from the very forces he sought to dismantle? The psychological strain of his profession was relentless. Operating in a world where trust was both currency and liability, he found himself unable to confide in anyone, not even those closest to him. Every interaction carried the risk of exposure, every relationship the potential for betrayal. This isolation bred a gnawing loneliness that no amount of external validation could assuage. Even the fleeting moments of camaraderie with fellow operatives were tinged with suspicion, as alliances in the world of espionage were notoriously transient. Over time, the boundaries between his real personality and his assumed personas blurred, leaving him unsure of who he truly was beneath the layers of fabrication. The emotional burdens of his work manifested in myriad ways. Sleep eluded him, not only due to the constant vigilance required by his missions, but also because of the haunting memories of those he had deceived or abandoned. Faces of unwitting accomplices, colleagues sacrificed for the greater mission, and civilians caught in the crossfire lingered in his mind, their eyes accusing him of complicity in their suffering. Each life touched by his actions weighed heavily on his conscience, a silent ledger of guilt that no metal could erase. The knowledge that his choices had irrevocably altered the fates of countless individuals was a burden he carried alone, locked away in the recesses of his psyche. Yet, perhaps the most insidious cost was the erosion of his idealism. When he first embarked on this path, he had been driven by a fervent belief in the righteousness of his cause, a conviction that the world would be safer, freer, and more just if the West prevailed. But as the years passed and the lines between ally and adversary grew ever blurrier, his faith began to waver. He witnessed firsthand how easily noble intentions could be corrupted, how readily ideals could be weaponized to justify atrocities. The realization that his efforts might not lead to the utopia he envisioned, but rather perpetuate cycles of violence and repression, shook him to his core. Despite these inner conflicts, he pressed on, propelled by a grim determination to see his mission through to the end. It was not pride or hubris that kept him tethered to this treacherous path, but a deep-seated fear of what might happen if he stepped away. The thought of abandoning his post, of leaving the world to the mercy of forces he had spent decades trying to counteract, was unbearable. And so, he endured, carrying the weight of his choices like a penance, hoping against hope that history would someday vindicate him. In the end, the true cost of his service was not measured in accolades or strategic victories, but in the fragments of his soul scattered along the shadowy corridors of the Cold War. For every triumph celebrated by his handlers, there was a private reckoning, a tally of lives disrupted, dreams shattered, and truths obscured. And though history would remember him as a hero, he would forever see himself as something else entirely. A man caught between worlds, belonging to neither, and paying the price for it every day. The legacy of shadows. Lessons from a life lived in secrecy. The spy's story, sprawling across decades of covert operations and geopolitical upheaval, offers a prism through which we can examine the enduring complexities of espionage and its place in shaping human history. At its core, his legacy is a testament to the paradoxical nature of intelligence work, an enterprise that thrives on secrecy yet leaves an indelible mark on the open stage of global affairs. His life underscores the immense power wielded by those who operate in the shadows, individuals whose decisions, cloaked in anonymity, ripple outward to alter the destinies of nations. Yet, it also serves as a sobering reminder of the costs borne by those who walk this precarious path, costs that extend far beyond the immediate dangers of capture or betrayal. One of the most salient lessons drawn from his career is the profound duality of espionage. On one hand, it is an indispensable tool for safeguarding national interests, exposing threats, and preventing catastrophes that could otherwise reshape the world in devastating ways. The spy's success in Operation Citadel exemplifies this reality, showcasing how a single act of intelligence gathering can tilt the scales of power and steer humanity away from the brink of disaster. On the other hand, the methods employed in such operations often blur ethical boundaries, raising uncomfortable questions about the trade-offs inherent in the pursuit of security. Deception, manipulation, and sacrifice are not merely tactics but necessities in the world of espionage, and the moral compromises they demand can leave lasting scars on both individuals and societies. This tension between necessity and morality is a recurring theme in the history of intelligence, and the spy's story encapsulates it with unflinching clarity. Beyond its operational significance, the spy's life invites reflection on the broader implications of secrecy in human affairs. Espionage, by its very nature, operates in opposition to transparency, a cornerstone of democratic governance and societal trust. The clandestine mechanisms through which intelligence is gathered and wielded often stand at odds with the principles of openness and accountability. Yet, paradoxically, the very opacity of these operations can sometimes preserve peace by averting crises that might arise from overt confrontations. This delicate balance between secrecy and transparency is one of the great philosophical dilemmas of modern geopolitics, and the spy's career highlights the challenges of navigating it. His ability to achieve monumental outcomes while remaining hidden from public view underscores the dual-edged sword of covert action, a force capable of immense good, but also of profound harm if misused or unchecked. The spy's legacy also illuminates the human dimension of espionage, a facet often overshadowed by the grand narratives of statecraft and strategy. Beneath the cloak of anonymity lies a deeply personal journey fraught with sacrifice, isolation, and introspection. His story reveals the emotional toll exacted by a life lived in perpetual disguise, where relationships are transactional, trust is fragile, and authenticity is a luxury few can afford. It is a poignant reminder that the individuals who undertake such missions are not mere instruments of policy but human beings grappling with the same fears, doubts, and aspirations as anyone else. Their struggles, both visible and unseen, are a testament to the resilience required to endure the unique pressures of their craft. Furthermore, the spy's contributions to history compel us to consider the broader question of individual agency in shaping collective outcomes. In an era dominated by impersonal forces such as technology, economics, and ideology, his story reaffirms the enduring power of personal initiative. It demonstrates how one person, armed with intellect, courage, and conviction, can defy the inertia of larger systems and leave an indelible mark on the course of events. This notion is both inspiring and humbling, offering a counterpoint to the deterministic narratives that often dominate discussions of history. At the same time, it raises important questions about the limits of individual action and the responsibilities that accompany extraordinary influence. The Spy's life reminds us that while individuals can change the world, they must also contend with the unintended consequences of their choices, a burden that requires wisdom as much as resolve. Ultimately, the legacy of this enigmatic figure transcends the specifics of his missions or the era in which he operated. It speaks to universal themes of loyalty, sacrifice, and the search for meaning in a world rife with contradictions. His story challenges us to grapple with the ethical ambiguities of power, the fragility of trust, and the enduring tension between ideals and realities. It invites us to reflect not only on the mechanics of espionage but also on the human spirit that animates it, a spirit capable of both extraordinary heroism and profound vulnerability. As we look back on his life and achievements, we are reminded that the shadows of history are not empty. They are filled with the hopes, fears, and struggles of those who dared to step into them. Step into the shadows, unveiling the untold stories of espionage. As you close this chapter on the spy who changed world history, you may find yourself reflecting on the intricate tapestry of courage, sacrifice, and moral ambiguity that defines the world of espionage. Yet, this narrative is but one thread in a vast and complex weave of stories waiting to be explored. Each act of espionage, each covert operation, carries with it untold tales of bravery and betrayal, of lives transformed and histories rewritten. Now is your chance to delve deeper into these shadowy corridors of history. Consider the countless operatives who, like the protagonist of our story, walked the fine line between heroism and treachery. Their stories are not just relics of the past but lessons and inspirations for the present and future. By exploring these narratives, you gain insights not only into the mechanics of global politics and intelligence but also into the timeless human conditions of trust, loyalty, and the quest for justice. Imagine uncovering the motivations of a double agent during the tensest moments of the Cold War or deciphering the coded messages that once swayed the balance of power. These explorations are not merely academic exercises. They are journeys into understanding the very fabric of human resilience and ingenuity. I urge you to continue this exploration. Seek out books, documentaries, and lectures that peel back the layers of secrecy surrounding historical espionage. Engage with experts and enthusiasts who share a passion for these hidden histories. Participate in forums and discussions that analyze the ethical dimensions and strategic implications of covert operations. By doing so, you not only enrich your understanding of history but also sharpen your perspective on contemporary issues of privacy, security, and ethical responsibility. Moreover, consider how these stories resonate with current global dynamics. The tools and tactics of espionage have evolved with technology, yet the fundamental questions remain the same. How do we balance security with freedom? Where do we draw the line between necessary secrecy and public accountability? Your engagement with these topics contributes to a broader dialogue that shapes our collective future. So step boldly into the shadows. Let the legacy of the spy who changed world history inspire you to explore, question, and understand the unseen forces that continue to shape our world. The stories are there, waiting to be discovered, waiting for you to bring them to light.